What is up, everybody, and welcome to FLW Videos. Since we just had the Gengar day, I figured it might be very important to talk about whether or not your Gengar is worth powering up. And I will say that there are certain circumstances that I would highly recommend you to power up your Gengar. So that's actually what we will be covering in today's episode, talking about what's going to be the best outlook for Gengar. And I just want to go ahead and say thank you so much for the support lately on the channel. We are very close to hitting 45,000 subscribers. So if you do enjoy this type of content, be sure to like and subscribe. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the video. So the first thing that we need to do is go ahead and take a look at all of the potential moves. And I have to say, for Gengar, there are quite a bit of moves available in the game. Mostly for the fact that there are some legacy moves available, which definitely stacks up. So first things first, when we are talking about just the base moveset, we have the options of Sucker Punch, which is a dark type move, Hex, which is a ghost type move. Then for the charge moves, we have Focus Blast, which is a fighting type, Shadow Ball, which is a ghost, and then finally Sludge Bomb, which is a poison. Then if we go ahead and take a look at the legacy fast moves, we have Shadow Claw and Lick, both are a ghost. And then for the legacy charge move, we have Sludge Wave, Dark Pulse, and Psychic. So now that we have taken a look at all of the moves, we'll go ahead and talk about the ones that really don't have that much of an option, and then we'll go ahead and talk about what's going to be the best ones that you want to use for Gengar. And then of course, once we talk about the best moves, we will stack them up against other Pokemon to see just how good Gengar is. So first things first, when we are talking about Gengar as a poison type attacker, we unfortunately have to kind of exclude it out, mostly for the fact that we don't have a quick move that is poison typing. There are certain circumstances where a Pokemon doesn't have like that double stab moveset and can still be good. For instance, maybe a Mewtwo that has a Shadow Ball, or even something like a Groudon with a Solar Beam. But the only reason that they can perform so well is just because their attack stats are just absolutely insane. But unfortunately for Gengar, it can't carry enough weight from the poison type department. So poison type is completely out. The next one is the dark typing. Now, although we can get a double dark type if you are including a legacy move as the charge move, we unfortunately can't perform as well as some other great dark type attackers. So that basically leaves just two movesets left. So for the two final typings of the movesets, we need to take a look at the ghost typing, and then secondly at the new exclusive move known as Psychic. So there is something kind of interesting, and I feel like it probably deserves an honorable mention, and that is from the Psychic typing. Now, of course, Gengar does not get the stat benefit off of it, but basically having a Psychic type move, that means that Gengar could be a very good option versus a fighting type Pokemon like Machamp. That's something that I've been hearing a lot. So I want to go ahead and take a look at some raid results just to see how a Psychic Gengar stacked up versus some other Pokemon. And I have to say that the results were unfortunately not as good as what you think they would be. If you go ahead and take a look at the results, basically what ended up happening instead was a Shadow Ball was the ideal charge move that you wanted to use versus a Machamp instead of Psychic. Despite the fact that Psychic is super effective against fighting type, Shadow Ball just completely outclasses it. So unfortunately, this is a case where a moveset simply isn't that great of a move. Despite it being super effective, it's not able to perform. But I did feel like it at least deserved an honorable mention. So what does that leave us next? Basically, we have to go down to just the ghost type. And when we are talking about ghost type, we have three different quick moves that we need to take a look at. And that, of course, is Shadow Claw, which is a legacy. We have Hex, which is currently available, and then Lick, which was available during the Gengar day. So out of all three of these, basically, the way that I look at it is I do think that Shadow Claw and Lick are kind of on their own level, and then Hex is kind of like a good backup, and obviously if you weren't available for either the legacy move or the Gengar day, Hex is really all you can do. So let's go ahead and take a look at some results for Gengar versus a Gengar. So when we take a look at the Gengar raid boss results, you will see that Mewtwo is actually in at first place. And as far as the time to win is concerned, it is significantly further back. But notice that Lick is the ideal move in this case, and it is not actually Shadow Claw. We will see in a later example where Shadow Claw would benefit more than Lick. But I have to say, Gengar being in its second is definitely a major plus. I thought a second example that we would take a look at is versus a Psychic type Pokemon. And since Deoxys is currently the EX raid boss, I figured we might as well take a look at some of those results. So if we take a look at the results, you will see that Gengar actually takes the number 1 position. Instead, this time using Shadow Claw Shadow Ball instead of Lick Shadow Ball. And then you will see in second, of course, the Mewtwo with the Psycho Cut Shadow Ball. Now, the biggest disclaimer is probably the number of deaths, where Gengar has 32 versus Mewtwo having 22. But I have to say, when you're going to something like an EX raid, because there's so many people doing it, I honestly believe that Gengar would be the better option if you are trying to get out the biggest amount of damage versus everyone that you are going against. Instead of just taking a look at the best moveset for Gengar versus Deoxys, why not go ahead and make a full comparison with some of the more common move lineups for Gengar? So go ahead and check this out. Basically, if you go ahead and stack them all up, you will see that Shadow Claw takes the number 1 spot. And then its second by a little bit is Lick Shadow Ball, so there is a little bit of a gap. And then up next is Sucker Punch Shadow Ball, and then finally Hex Shadow Ball. So when we are taking a look at the results, something that kind of stands out to me is just showing you how bad Hex actually is as a ghost type move. The fact that Sucker Punch is able to outperform Hex just goes to show that it isn't, unfortunately, the best option that you can have from the ghost typing. So obviously you would want to use Lick, you would want to use Shadow Claw as a move set for Gengar. So now that we have covered the move set for Gengar, how much of a threat does it have in the future? So basically what we considered to be the biggest threat was probably Giratina, but Giratina actually got a very bad moveset. But there is, however, the Origin form. The Origin form tends to have a little bit more of an emphasis on the attack. So there is a little bit of a threat coming from the Origin Giratina form. I have high hopes for this form, but we don't even know when it will be added into the game. So in the meantime, even if a Mewtwo with Shadow Ball can outperform from the ghost type attacking, Gengar is definitely in at the 2nd position. So I definitely think that it is worth powering up. And having said that, there is one more added benefit to Gengar, which we will see in the near future. So there is something known as the stat rework, which for some reason hasn't been put out into the game. Hopefully if you are watching this video a little bit later on, it has since changed. But basically with the stat rework, what we've seen is there is actually a buff for Gengar, and it is definitely in the department that makes it so much better of an option. The fact that the HP was reworked, and in the rework, Gengar did increase its HP, is something that is very important because it acts like such a glass cannon. So in this case, because of the increase in the HP, I do think that Gengar will easily be a more viable option as just kind of like a general ghost type attacker. Versus when we were going against a Mewtwo, for example, it was just too much of a glass cannon, it couldn't take the confusion shots. Maybe now with the HP rework, it could end up taking an extra shot or two, which could definitely go a long way. So having said that, I'm definitely behind powering up a Gengar as long as you have Shadow Claw, or you have Lick as the fast move, and then Shadow Ball as the charge move. I think that once you get those moves down, it really can be a great Pokemon. But of course, I want to know what you think about it, so go ahead and let me know in the comments section below whether or not you think it is worth powering up a Gengar. I have to say I had a ton of fun with the event. I was so fortunate to be able to get a shiny Gengar along the way, and it was a 96%, which I'm personally super excited about. I cannot wait to be able to show it off, to be able to use it in raids, and then eventually when PvP gets here, I can't wait for people to be able to see it. But anyways, I hope you did enjoy this episode. If you did, be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Hit me like a tidal wave, ooh, triggered by the aftershock. Hit me like a tidal wave. I can't hit these high notes. How does he do this? This is impossible. I give up.